Dire wolves are apparently making a return. We're not talking about Game of Thrones here. Scientists with a company called Colassal Biosciences, which we all kind of giggle a little bit at because it doesn't sound real, but they are. They say that they have genetically engineered wolves with white hair and muscular jaws, just like the dire wolf that went extinct thousands of years ago. The wolf pups that they have that you've probably maybe seen online, kind of howling and making their little noises, range in age from 3 to 6 months. So joining us now is Grant Spickelmier from the International Wolf Center in Ely. Thanks so much for joining us, Grant.
Oh, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So first, let's kind of just start with the basics. For those of us who don't know, what is a dire wolf?
Yeah, so I've had a lot of questions about dire wolves in the last 24 hours, as you could probably guess. A dire wolf is an animal that lived during the Ice Age. If you have the visions of those Ice Age dioramas maybe you saw in middle school, with woolly mammoths walking across the plains and saber-toothed cats. They were the large apex, one of the large apex predators back then. Interestingly, scientists are a little bit conflicted about how closely related they are to wolves of today. In fact, the most recent science says that they kind of belong in their own genus. They're actually more separated from wolves than, say, coyotes or African wild dogs or other canids out there. But they kind of served the same ecological role at that time in being a large canid that would hunt in packs and take down prey.
Okay, so in very sort of layman's terms, what did these scientists do to sort of recreate this dire wolf, maybe not wolf?
Yeah, well, we've all seen Jurassic Park, right? Yeah. So, I think that's the idea here is that they took genetics out of some fossilized dire wolf bones, and they didn't immediately just make a clone dire wolf out of that. They had to start with some gray wolf DNA, and they kind of compared the two DNAs, and they rewrote some of the gray wolf DNA with dire wolf genes. So it's probably a better, more accurate description to say these are gray wolves with dire wolf characteristics rather than true dire wolves, right? Like they rewrote certain parts of the DNA of a gray wolf to more closely match that of a dire wolf.
Interesting. So what's the purpose here, do you think? What's the goal with them doing this?
Well, I won't speak for Colassal Biosciences. I think there are probably multiple reasons that they have for doing this, along with the technologies they're learning about and the techniques they're creating. I think obviously there's a fascination about bringing something like the dire wolf back into modern day life. My hesitation with it is, of course, the environment is very different than it was 20, 30, 50,000 years ago. There really is no place on this planet that would be appropriate to reintroduce dire wolves. Their prey is gone, the ecology has changed. So I think that idea of releasing dire wolves back into the environment is probably something I don't see a future for, and frankly I don't think Colassal Biosciences sees that either. They've said they don't plan on releasing the three. What I'm more interested in, frankly, is there are some other potential uses of this technology for working with existing endangered species and supporting the gene pools of other endangered species like the red wolf, and that is something that they've talked about as well, as they've actually cloned some red wolves that could potentially be used to bolster the very small population that's out there right now.
We have red wolves here in Minnesota. You guys have been doing some work with.
Well, there are a couple facilities in Minnesota that have been breeding red wolves. Yeah. The wild red wolves are down in North Carolina. The small population of wild red wolves. And the interesting thing there is it's a very small population, and it's all based on a small set of founders. And what Colassal Biosciences has done is use some of their technology to find other red wolf genetics that are out there kind of mixed in with coyote populations down in Texas. And they think they've reworked that to bring in some new red wolf genetics that could bolster that population, because you just don't want a population to get too inbred and too closely related to each other, because then it just over time deteriorates the overall population. So that's a potential use of this technology, aside from the sci-fi dire wolf kind of thing that has some practical uses.
Yeah, and has obviously picked up a ton of traction online. People are so interested in this. I'm curious, you mentioned earlier that if a dire wolf would not maybe be able to survive in this environment because it's so different, is there enough of the mix of DNA? How much is the gray wolf that these three could, or do you think not really?
I don't know enough about what genes they picked or selected. I read actually something online about this too. When you think of like the dire wolves were existing at a time with, large woolly mammoths, the large bison of the time, these very large megafauna, and that was why they evolved so big and strong, 20-30% larger than the largest gray wolves. And that prey, it doesn't exist anymore. So now I know Colassal Biosciences is also talking about cloning woolly mammoths, which is another step, and I think that's a question there. But I think the other big question is, if you were going to release these in the wild, where would you do that? If we watched a couple of years ago, Colorado released gray wolves back into the wild, and it was very controversial, and there's still a lot of challenges going on with that. And I guess you have to ask the question: who would want dire wolves running around in their community, and what would they be preying on? So I think that's that's the kind of questions that would have to be thought through before you'd ever consider any kind of release. Which it doesn't sound like they're planning on, but that's it's definitely something that brings you into that Jurassic Park territory.
I was going to say, in the movies, they usually don't plan on it, Grant.
We all know how that movie ends.
Exactly. So I guess, should we be excited about this? Should we be terrified about this?
It's interesting. As I've talked to folks in my community, I'd say the range of reactions has kind of been across the whole spectrum. I think some people are kind of disgusted with it. They don't like they don't think this is something that's needed or good for conservation. There's others who are like, well, if this science can be helpful in supporting in small endangered species populations like red wolves, if there's other populations that have more recently gone extinct that could be brought back, and the ecology is still there, I think it's like most things in science. These things themselves are not necessarily good or bad. It's what we do with them. This technology is not necessarily good or bad. It's what we do with them, and I think that's a good question. But I get the fascination with it, right? Like, I've watched Game of Thrones, and I get the idea of dire wolves being exciting, and I like Ice Age. I was always more fascinated with Ice Age animals than with the dinosaurs and Jurassic era animals. So I get the fascination with it. I just don't see a practical ecological current use for dire wolves. It's just really captivated so many people. We wanted to go straight to the source, not the folks involved in the science, the scientific experiments, but the folks who know wolves the best. If you are around Ely at any time, you need to go check out the International Wolf Center. It's such an incredible resource for folks. And if you're not there, you have the live cam, which we take sometimes on our show as well, which is so great. Anything interesting popping up on the wolf cam that we should know about? Well, I think we've still got a little bit of snow up there, which in Ely. So, if people want to remember what snow looks like from the Twin Cities, You can see that. But we've got 4 wolves, and I think they're just as cool to watch as dire wolves, frankly. We've got Blackstone, Kaz, Grayson, and Rika, 1 female and 3 males, and they've got a nice established pack going on there. And oh, yep, there you go.
There's the cam.
There's our live cam. It looks like you're maybe getting. I'm looking in the back. There might be one laying in the grass back there.
Oh wow, good eyes.
You can hear the ravens too. That for sure is always a part of our.
Where are you seeing it? I know it's kind of hard to see, but if it's there, where are you seeing it?
Back left, I see something, but it might just be a log.
Okay. Ooh.
Yeah, I think that's just a log. I don't think it's the wolves out right now. They're out pretty much every day. They're in their enclosure. They come down by these cameras, pretty regularly, especially at the beginning of the day and towards mid to late afternoon. That's always a good time to watch our cameras. And we are open to the public. Anybody who is up for taking the drive up to Ely, we're open to the public on weekends right now, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. And then we open 7 days a week, Memorial Day weekend through mid-October. So,
great.
Definitely come check us out. And I think the same things that fascinate people with dire wolves, real gray wolves are not that far off.
Yeah. And you can check out the ravens too, because clearly they're dying for attention up there, just really screaming for you to come and visit. Thank you so much, Grant. We really appreciate you hopping on here in kind of a short notice situation. We just really, really wanted to gauge what you guys were thinking about this today.
No, it's definitely an interesting day for science, and I'm going to be watching it closely. So
for sure.
Thanks for the call.
You bet. All right, take care, Grant. Thank you.
Bye.